And so, welcome to my place. I'm really stoked that there's such a large turnout. And thanks very much, Lisa, for organising all that. And so I thought I'll give you guys a bit of an introduction into what I'm actually doing out there. So we've just been dealing with seeds, and seeds are quite important because without seeds I couldn't be doing any of this. In fact, what I wanted to add as well, a lot of the things that I grow here are not grown from seed. They're grown vegetatively. And so I was thinking, because that's also part of what I want to do in the future, to enable people to do things like agroforestry or like very diverse perennial cropping systems. And a lot of the plants that you need for those things are not propagated by seeds. Like banana is one of the most famous one, right? No one grows banana from seed.
Yeah, there is seed bananas.
Then you got seeds in the bananas, so it's probably not the most convenient way to eat bananas. And once in a while it happened to me too. I had a bunch of with seeds in there. And in fact they're at the moment doing, they're basically trying to find seeds of bananas because we need more diversity in the banana industry because of the all the diseases that we got, like the Panama disease and others. But in my bananas so far there wasn't any seeds.
Monoculture disease.
Lots of different varieties, and I'm happy to give away suckers if anyone likes some. And then there's also all sorts of other things like sweet leaf, and there's some gingers that are quite interesting one, cassava and other things. So just saying, that's not seeds, but that's also things that should be spread out wide and far, so people have the chance to do these things. I've just had a chat to a gentleman over there. What was your name again?
Revel.
Rev. That's right. And you said like you're doing a syntropic system on like 20 hectares or
20
something.
hectares.
Woohoo!
Very large areas.
Yeah. Whereabouts?
My first question was, where do you get all the material, the planting material from, right?
Yeah.
And then the answer was, yeah, that's the problem, right? And that's exactly the problem. So this is really, that's right, that's why the seed savers come in. So you need to have planting stock, especially when it comes to larger areas. But this is partly supplying me with food, but it also is a repository of planting stock, that especially stuff that you can't grow from seed. And so what you see out there is swales. So the obvious part here is landscaping. There's quite a lot of landscaping done. When I bought this place, there was nothing, and then people usually ask me, so, but the driveway was here. No, there was not. But this pad was here. No, there was not. So it was just a slope going all the way down the hill. And that means where we're standing here right now, this is artificial. So that came out from over there, and I've just flattened it out to gain a bit more flat area there. So
well, it's just grass.
So it was cleared land.
It was grass, and then there was lantana invading part of it because it was pasture that was just abandoned. And then as it happens, also maybe tying in with syntropics, so natural processes of succession, you get then the first woody plants come in, and eventually the ecosystem will change into what it wants to be naturally. And this is probably the thing that I want to touch on mostly on my talk here, and to give you guys an idea of where I'm coming from an ecological perspective, that if you live in an area with a certain amount of rainfall, it's naturally want to be a forest. And you can look anywhere in Australia, wherever there is enough rainfall, it is forest, unless someone cut it down. And if you let it alone, it'll naturally become forest again. However, when there is weeds like lantana and other things, then they complicate things. So they are not naturally Australian plants, and they don't have a lot of natural like pests and predators that would keep them in check. And so they unfortunately make it quite hard for the native vegetation to cover the area again with forest. And I've seen areas of lantana being lantana for 12 years, and that's what it is. Even saying we've altered the landscape here dramatically, the whole entire country, because of all these introduced plants. And that's why our natural succession processes are now impeded by those plants. Be careful with the genetics that you invite to your land. That's where I'm coming from, right? So I've collected genetics here. That's all just code, genetic code. That's what I'm doing. It's like a library of code. And I'm picking the ones that are like useful for me, and I'm discarding the ones that are not. I'm actually trying to exclude the ones that are not useful for me, or that become a pain in the neck. Because like this is one person doing this, right? So if I had lantana in here, or even guinea-grass is another one, I wouldn't be able to do that. You know what I mean? So you really, if you are smart about the plants that you allow in your place, you're gonna make it. You work smart or smarter or harder. Right?
Yeah.
And some plants are just a lot of hard work. They produce a high workload, and some others are not. And spiky vines, I personally hope I got no time for this.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm coming from. I'm a very pragmatic person.
Yeah.
You know, you will find that I'm not very religious about anything. So I had a lot of time to look around what is there around, and I could also see how these things play out in time. Because it's easy to set up a permaculture garden, and then 5 years later, what does the thing look like? 10 years later, right? So the gardening is a long haul, it's a long game, and you really want to see what these things turn into, because the holy grail is, you know, you plant this thing out and then it just works by itself. I don't know if any one of you guys has a garden that works by itself. You know,
Hey Mike, when did you start? When did you start this place?
Pardon?
When did you start this place?
I bought it in April 3 years ago, so 3.5 years ago. Yeah. And so there was guinea-grass, there was brachiaria grass mostly, which still is there mostly. It's now getting shaded out in places, so we've got this transition happening that we just said before, so a succession is happening. But I'm just choosing to make the succession with exotic plants because I can eat them, and there's not a lot of native plants that I can eat, even though I do include some, like, well, I found, by the way, if anyone of you guys is interested in doing something like syntropics or some sort of very close planting, Davidson plum is an amazing one because it's a very tall, slender tree. That's more like a general advice. Another thing is the native tamarinds. They also work really well in that regard. They're also more like spindly, tall things.
Nice,
and there's
too.
also particular varieties that have larger roots than others. So we just had a chat about this with Jay. So some native plants have a variety of different species. You probably are aware that there's not just one tamarind or like one lemon aspen, or even like macadamias have many different varieties. Davidson plum has another variety, and you just look around a little bit to get the bang for the buck pretty much, and just get again the genetics that are the most suitable for what you want. But so they can be incorporated into those systems here, and so do native leguminous plants. So with supporting plants, you will find that the largest plants that are in here now are ice cream beans. And I did plant a lot of ice cream beans because I got a hold of quite a few seeds of them. They were very slow to start, and they also take a lot of water. So it depends where you are. I think here I'm a bit on the verge of where you want to really use that plant in that system. Kuranda has about 2,000. We might get a little bit more here, maybe 2,500 mil of rain. And I think ice cream bean is really something that's better suited to almost twice the amount of rain. So if you go down to Babinda area, that's where they actually get weed. They become a weed. And that's really what you want, a plant that is not struggling at all, because you want to then use that plant to chop and drop that. And if I have to constantly water that thing, you know, then it's actually, I have to do something to make that work. It's not very natural. So again, the holy grail is I'm not doing anything. I just put it there and it works. And so what I did, because I didn't know, I had to basically feel myself into that. I've chosen a whole heap of different leguminous plants. And so these leguminous plants are either from overseas, or they are native ones. Like we've got a Mackay cedar, for example. I'm not sure if any one of you guys knows that, or forest cyrus, maybe it's called. Of course, I'm not going to let it grow that big in there, but I do have it in my windbreak in my tree planting over that way, and I will let it go to a large diameter. But that's a very feathery leafed tree, and so you see on these guys here, they're my favorites at the moment, and probably for a while, because I'm at the moment trying to throw a lot of things in this, just to give you a general overview of what I'm doing here, right? So it goes from here to there. We're talking about the swales, now we're at the legumes and whatnot, but it's a central piece of this design here, to have plants that you harvest to feed your fruit trees. Because they can do something that the fruit trees can't, or most can't, which is fixing nitrogen from the air. And these soils here are really nitrogen poor, so we are not in Tolga here, right? So if I had the Tolga soils, you throw something there and it goes, right? Because they've got the best soils of Australia. But in Kuranda, it's a different story. So I can tell you, really, there's not a joke. Anything that I plant here and then not do anything with it, and I don't put any fertilizer or anything, it doesn't do anything. And then eventually it gets eaten by the termites. So anything that I've grown here that's looking nice, I had to muck around. And I actually bought rock phosphate by the ton, and I also bought gypsum by the ton, and I have to also get nitrogen, like I use my urine to throw around the trees, and then sometimes the odd bag of blood and bone and things, right? So only organic, that's the other thing. The whole point of this is I don't want synthetic fertilizers here because they are not sustainable, and I'm sure you guys know the story with fossil fuel inputs there. But so these trees here, they are pretty much a source of nitrogen because they can fix it from the air with the roots. But then the leaves that they make, they need nitrogen, right? So all the green color is made out of nitrogen. So when you then chop and drop those, or even with those large ones, when the leaves fall down, they actually add nitrogen to my soil. So they increase the nitrogen content of the soils around them, and the fruit trees benefit off that.
What are they called, sorry?
So these tall ones here, they're called Brazilian fern trees, and they are the fastest trees in the world, really. They're from South Brazil, which is also good because they're similar latitude to here. And so they're very well suited in terms of the climate. And then the other thing which makes them really well suited, and that's again referring to the genetics that are sometimes a curse, sometimes a, what's the opposite of the curse? Like a blessing, exactly. These guys produce barely any seed. Right, so do you guys know Lucina? Kevin, do you know Lucina?
Where did you get your Brazilian fruit trees from?
Yeah, so I had to climb a 30-meter trees. I'm a tree climber, and so I can get to places where other people can't. But I got like 10 seeds out of a. I didn't climb the 30 meters. The tree was about that big, but I got only about 10 seeds out of it. So and the seed, one pod has a seed about this big. Right, so it's not tiny things like the Lucina. You know the coffee bush, Lucina? It's the best legume in the world. Right, so farmers have actually introduced that thing because it fixes more nitrogen per hectare than any other plant. However, it becomes a terrible weed and you can't control it because one plant makes 1 million seeds and they're tiny. They start growing everywhere until they cover, it's just monocultures of it. So that's again a genetic that I don't need here. And so this guy here is something that combines, it ticks boxes. And so it is a tall, slender thing, so it doesn't shade too much. The ice cream bean is a different story. I have to constantly chop that back because it wants to do an arching canopy, but that then competes with the fruit trees with light. It's another thing we could probably touch on, like photosynthesis, but anyway. So these guys up there, they fill a strata where the other trees are not, and so they're not taking sun away, and they don't produce a lot of seeds. They fix my nitrogen, they're very fast growing, so there's a lot of things that go for them. So Brazilian fern tree, but that's not the only thing. Mackay cedar, also very feathery leaf plants. So any of those feathery leaf plants, most of them are nitrogen fixers, and there's a huge array of native ones as well. And they can be used in that regard if you prefer to use native plants. Also from an aspect of ease, because they are native, so they are already used to the conditions in this place. So you might not have to look after them very much. Mackay cedar, so the botanical name is a really complicated one. It's called Paracerianthes tuna. Yeah, but Mackay cedar. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite ones. Then Quila is another one I grow. So there's a little Quila in the back there. More a long-term project. I think you guys know Quila as the timber for floorboards, for verandas and things. And and this one. So this one for sandalwood. So that's an interesting one now. So this tree, the red beet tree or false sandalwood, Adenathera pavonina, that thing is part of that family. It's actually a Sessalpinaceae, but it doesn't nodulate. So how do I know that? Because there's a book that you can download online. It's a PDF format, and it tells you all the genera of leguminous plants, and it tells you if they nodulate or not. What means nodulate? So when a plant fixes nitrogen, it fixes it. It's not the plant; it's a bacteria. That's called rhizobia. You might have heard of that one. People who grow soybean might have to inoculate their soybeans with that. And so these bacteria live in an association with the plant in little balls on their root systems. When you rip a sensitive weed out of the ground here, we could almost do that. you'll see little balls hanging off the roots. And when you crush them, they're pink inside, and that's actually where those bacteria live in, and they fix nitrogen from the air. This guy here does not have that, but it's still a very vigorous grower, so you can totally use it as a supporting plant, but it won't give you extra nitrogen. So if the soil is poor in nitrogen, it's not going to grow all that well. Yeah, so kind of an interesting thing, but that's a book that you can download. I can't remember the name, but something about nitrogen fixing plants or legumes of the world or something. But yeah, talk to me later, and yeah, we can retrieve the title of that book. So anyway, that's a chapter about this, and then the other thing is water. So as I mentioned, we are on 2,500 millimeters here, and the denser you plant, the more water you need. And that's also an ecological thing, and that's what I try to respect, that I can't force things. So this is why I'm not entirely comfortable with the syntropic system where you put like so many things, because all these root systems for the photosynthesis, they need water. And if there is no water, they're not going to make it, right? So in Australia, where there is no rain, there is no plant. So plants can't make water. And that's another thing I hear all the time, that you put more plants there because they make water. If that was the case, all of Australia would be green. But it's not. That's it. All you got to do is just look at a satellite image of Australia, and just by looking at the image you can tell how much rain there is by the vegetation cover. Right, so the rainfall will determine planting density until it gets to a point where all you see is green. That's close canopy, and that's what we call rainforest. And that's the climax. It can't get denser than that, because after that the limit is not water anymore. Now the limit is sunlight. And so I'm really trying to do that, to fill this up as much as I can, to make so basically maximum photosynthesis, but nevertheless that photosynthesis is limited by my water supply. And I have a bore, and I do irrigate all these swales, and they are already swales, right? So what I'm trying to do is maximizing my water that goes through the landscape here by not just pumping it out of a bore, as Kerwald does with like, I don't know, 4 or 5 bores, you know. And I'm thinking every wet season, like, what's my water table going to look like after this dry season? You know? So because this is the thing, it's not just endless, right? So we still want to be water efficient. Even though the bore here is great, I don't try to go to the limits of it, and I still want to be as efficient as I can be, just with the insulation of a house. You know, just put air conditioning in an uninsulated house is one thing, but you can also insulate it and save power with the aircon. And same thing here. So that's now leading me over to the earthworks. So the reason why I've put so many earthworks here is so that when water comes down the hill, it doesn't just run down into my gully there, but it stays in the landscape. And it gives it time to soak in. And really, if it's not like 300 mil of rain, nothing goes in the gully. It's all caught in the swales. So these swales are pretty much dams along the contour. And some people say they'd rather have a swale on a tight slope, on a slight slope, to not have any flooding or waterlogging or whatnot. I don't see the point if a swale is not horizontal, because it's not going to stay. If there's any slope in the swale, so you have to really measure that very precisely, and I used a laser for that, to make sure that the water, basically when it comes down the hill and goes into the swale, it goes up and down like a tide. And if you're worried about breaching and like erosion through, you know, too much water, you just over-engineer your overflows. It's really easy. You just need enough overflows, and you make the swale also doesn't catch as much water as the berm. So you're not sure if you're familiar with the terminology, but the mound where my plants grow on, that's called the berm, and the ditch behind it is the swale. And so that berm came through the excavations of that ditch, and it was just piled up on top. Might just add to that as well, because the soils here, first of all, only like this deep. Again, Tolga is like meters, right? I've got this much, and then the rest is red, and it has a pH of 3.5. That's about the same as vinegar. I did a bit of concreting here, and all this is actually under this crusher dust. That's all subsoil, and I poured a bit of concrete on that soil, and it was like reacting, right? Because the concrete is a little alkaline, and it was very violently reacting. So the plant roots don't really like it down there, so I'm gonna be doomed here with shallow root systems, which is also not good for cyclones. So I've got to watch these trees, you know, anything, because there won't be a lot of, the anchoring's not going to be very good. Not great. So if you now take that from there and put it there, now you've doubled your soil, right? And that's where you grow your plants, and then in the ditch you catch the water. And then the height of the water, as I mentioned, is not determined by the berm, it's determined by your overflow. And if you're worried, just make the overflow a little bit lower, and just add more over time, just test it out. If you make a 2 meter overflow every 20 meters, don't think it will ever have a biblical flood that's going to exceed that. So that's a lot of people have issues with swales because they think, okay, when there's too much water going over it, it's going to just wash it all away. But again, they can all be regulated and remedied by, or prevented, I should say, by the overflows. They have to be very well compacted. So obviously on that scale, you're not going to hand dig your swales, so you have a machine there, so then the machine can do that as well. And then you want to make sure that there's vegetation on those overflows, or rocks or anything that covers it, so you can't have loose soil there, because obviously that's going to erode if water would run over that. Yeah, so that's basically it. So the core ideas that I had there that I tried to combine, right? So where do I get extra nutrients from? Especially nitrogen, because it's the major plant nutrient, and I don't want to buy it, and I don't want a synthetic input either. So I have to use legumes. It's the only way to get it naturally, and that's really how a forest works in nature as well. And then the other thing is the water management to maximize water. So all the water that comes off my property here finds its way into those swales, and it's still not quite catching the area over there because my money ran out at some point, and so my swales only go so far. But there will be more swales this way in the future. So now there's a lot of people here. Do you guys want to do a little walk? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Could I just ask, what other mulching methods do you use?
Oh, good.
Do you bring in bales of hay? Do you like using that? Because some of it is chemically manipulated.
Nice. Okay, maybe before we do the walk, it's sort of nice that we're still here. Questions, we'll do the questions first, even though there will be questions out there probably. But so if you have any questions, throw them at me now. So with mulch, that's another thing. My neighbor has just cleared recently pretty much all of that.
Oh, I thought that was all your land.
And he's burnt, no, so there's so I planted durian there and cacao, and now the wind from the east is smashing my trees. I'm like, no. So I'm trying whatever I can. I've planted some gingers there, very tall ones, to fill this up, like first of all privacy, but also the wind, right? But so he's cleared all that, and that's fair enough. Like, he's entitled to do that. The environmental overlay allowed it. However, he burned everything. He's got big machines, put on big piles, and I looked at it and said, what can I do to, like, I had a little chat with him and said, I got 80 cubes of mulch out of everything I cleared, and I've used it there, it's amazing, they're trying to do it that way so that they can think about the benefits of mulch, but too hard, just every single tree went up in smoke. I could not believe it. Whereas here, so I did have to cut some of the wattles down because, as you probably know, wattles are not very long lived, and some of them were overhanging this pad. So wattles there, and then there was some single trees down that way. So overall, I got about 80 cubic meters of mulch over a period of probably 2 years, and that's the only mulching input that I've got here. So all the trees that I cut, I've returned to the land this way. And with the hay, it doesn't last very long, right? It's a lot of work, like mulching, and that's why I love the wattles, because they stay forever. With mulching, maybe I'll do a little bit more about that. So when you put a very woody material on your soil, you're going to end up with nitrogen drawdown. You might have heard that before. So you can't do that without putting a high nitrogen fertilizer underneath. So you are compensating for the drawdown that happens when all this woody material gets eaten by the bacteria and the fungi.
I've been making something good. This guy I follow on YouTube, this American guy, he calls it fetid swamp water, and just everything he prunes, he shoves it in a big bucket of water and put the lid on so you don't get mozzies, and after 2 weeks, we fertiliser hay bales with it. As soon as you take the lid off and stir it, all the flies swarm, it stinks, and it must be, the garden loves it.
It's a anaerobic decomposition, and you get some nitrogen with that. So again, you could also do that with the legume trees. I could chuck my ice cream beans in that, and that might also work. I'm not sure how high the nitrogen is, but definitely any of those soils. Some people swear by nettle, stinging nettle or whatever it is. It's mostly like you use a weed or something that grows really easily. You know, here it's the blue top. That's a shocker. And that seems to have a really easy time, you know, to grow with the little nitrogen there is. So, okay, well then I'll take that stuff and you could put that in a barrel and then use that, make that into a liquid fertilizer. Just be a bit careful in the wet season with liquid fertilizer because of the extra rain that you get, it might just leach away. So a solid one might be better. It hangs around longer because the mulch that breaks down on the surface also takes longer. If you've got that much mulch and you pour a liquid fertilizer on underneath, then the liquid fertilizer, some of it will leach and the other stuff will get eaten by the plants, and then you got nothing again to compensate for the rest. So you got to have something up there that's helping against that nitrogen drawdown. So with the hay rots faster away. It's like in the tropics, it's really hard to increase organic matter content in the soil. And it just gets broken down and eaten away, right? So your soil doesn't get blacker no matter what you do. I'm also a firm advocate of biochar, and that's for another day, and I'm actually making that as well, but that's a form of organic matter that stays in the soil. So if you use hay, it's the stuff that stays the least, but you still have the same workload. So I still recommend to use wood chip or like a tree lopper's mulch, and it doesn't even have to be. Cheers!
That's a lot for me.
It's time to celebrate already! So basically, the longer your mulch lasts, the longer you have the benefit of the mulch as suppressing plants that you don't like. I don't want to call them weeds, right? But again, you're just sealing the surface off, so you're not getting all these other things that you might not want to deal with, right? Like guinea-grass or arsenics. And so you put that on there, but if it rots away quickly, you have to put it on again, and it takes ages. So also, now I'm at a stage, so for the first year I had to use the wood chip. Now my ice cream beans are getting vigorous enough that I can now chop and drop and throw my mulch in situ. So that's really the idea in the end of the day. And also pigeon peas, I had a lot of them, but they died. They're not very long-lived here. The termites get into them. So I had a huge amount of pigeon peas everywhere, but then they just collapsed and fell over. But I planted them in between the swales, but there wasn't enough material, so I planted them on the swales. Pigeon pea is a really nice one because it's not a giant tree and it's easy to maintain, and you can chop it all the time. You get the peas off them that you can eat. Unfortunately, the wallabies have found out about that now, and they're ripping mine to pieces, so they're actually breaking them off. There's quite a large wallaby here. It can jump quite high. It's giving me a really hard time with things at the moment.
Plant more pigeon peas.
Yeah, or have wallaby stew one day. What do you call that? Like nature farming, or like semi-wild animal husbandry? Yeah, so pigeon peas or any of those things. That's what I would do. Just fill it up with legumes mostly, because really, if you want a sweet fruit, you have to allow for enough sun, enough nutrient. You don't want to deal with the bugs all the time. If plants start competing so much for nutrient and water, like I've got bug problems. It's crazy. I've actually collected last night. I collected a jar of bugs that's in the kitchen there. I should bring it out.
You're gonna eat them?
No, just to show you what kind of bugs I have. The worst is the fruit spotting bug, and really the only thing for an organic farmer to deal with insect pressure is to keep your plants as well nourished as they can be. And as soon as you put too much competition there, they all struggle. And that's my problem, right? So I can't really see the thing if you fill it all up because you want ground cover and you panically, ooh, there's an empty space, quick, put a plant there. Eventually you're going to run out of water, and then the plant's going to wilt, and then the juices don't flow, and then the insects cause you problems. Also, I don't plant cassava between my trees because I'm not going to rip a cassava this much thing out of my fruit trees and bug them by its root systems of my fruit trees. That doesn't seem logical to me. So you also want to check.
That's why you plant them on the edges.
That plant, yeah, exactly, right. So you want that plant, when you harvest it, you cause a huge disturbance in the soil. Also, because on the swales, I don't want my berm to get destroyed because the water could potentially go in there. So no cassava is allowed on the berms. So it depends a little bit, but that's why. So some of the areas that they have a little bit of ground cover or not much. Also, I would love to have everything covered with a spinach underneath there, like you see in the front part, but it's just I ran out of time. You know, so there will be
Plantain
more.
would be a good one.
Hey?
Plantain would be a good one, just to keep the earth cool underneath.
What is plantain?
Plantain? It's
Comfrey.
comfrey.
Ah, comfrey.
Yeah, either one.
Yeah, I don't have any, but I'm happy to plant that. Yeah.
Why would you not let the cassava just die there though? Just rot.
It doesn't. It's perennial. I had cassava here for 4 years. All it does, the tubers get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. But I mean, just keep dropping it.
Yeah, but
use
why
it
not?
as a chop and drop and let the actual tubers.
Yeah, but
drop
it's
in
not
the ground.
very, okay. I see that, but you know what? It's not a nitrogen fixer. You know, so
But it's gonna
so
create
if I have the
humus in that
choice,
soil.
pardon?
It's going to create humus in that soil.
Yeah, but so does any other plant. So again, a plant will do the same, but some plants, the currency is nitrogen, right? And if a plant doesn't make it, it'll take it from somewhere else. So if you create competition with your crops by putting something there that also needs nitrogen from the soil, then you're not winning much. I mean, I do understand that cassava has associations with mycorrhizas, so do my fruit trees, right? And so do leguminous plants. So for me, I really, like, that's just where I'm coming from. If I have the choice to put a leguminous plant somewhere as a supporting plant or a ground cover versus a non-leguminous plant, I'd go for the leguminous plant because I get, on top of the mycorrhizal action and phosphorus solubilization and whatnot, I also get the nitrogen.
Because your aim is growing fruit trees.
Yeah, and I want my fruit to be yummy and big and not blemished if I can avoid it, you know. So the competition is a thing, right? You can see it in the forest as well.
Yeah.
You try, like I'm trying over there with my little cacao trees under the native fruit trees. You try grow a little tree next to a big tree.
Cassava's good for
It's almost impossible.
Cassava's good for breaking clay though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
if
is
you need
a lot
to.
of other plants.
Yeah.
You know, again, there's really, like, any vigorous rooting plant can do that. And we have cassava. I've got lots here in my veggie garden, but I grow it as a root vegetable, you know. But to put it into my a benefit, yes, I get it. You can grow it from cuttings, so quick you can grow lots of it. Yeah, fair enough. It's fine. I don't want to completely discard it, you know, discredit it. It's just in my idea, I'm trying to probably get something else there instead. And also because of these tubers that then rot and then the scrub turkeys get into them. In fact, here, after doing all this talk about this now, I can't even grow any cassava anymore anyway. Like for me, it's already all over because the scrub turkeys have found out of the cassava. I put a cutting anywhere outside of this fence. They recognize the leaf and they ring back the whole thing. Right? They dig around, no tuber, no worries, let's wreck it anyway. That's really what happens to a lot of things now. So I've become really limited here with what I can plant because of the wildlife pressure. Something that I didn't expect. The first 6 months were fine, you know. Then over time it became more and more and more. Now every new tree that you can't really see it near, but every new tree that I plant, I have to put a fence around it. You know, so the first lot of trees that are in there, they were just the lucky ones. They got a certain height to, you know, where the leaves are out of reach of those animals. And now every new thing, especially jackfruit, mulberry, meringue, pedalai, anything that's related to jackfruit, there's no way I can grow any of that stuff. They just chomp it down to a stick. Yeah.
Was it bush dog, did? No.
No, the wallabies.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we got cattle country, there's plenty of grass. So yeah, so there's a few complications, and that probably also brings another good point across. It will depend on your situation.
Pinto peanut.
Yeah, pinto peanut, I've got that over there. I've trialed it, it's actually great. I don't think the rats do much there because they're not digging too much. I'm not too worried. And I should put the pinto peanut out more. Just give you one thing, pinto peanut needs a lot of water. And the alternative in a drier country, I think some of you guys are from Mariba, wins cassia. But it's got a leaf like this, like a butterfly sort of thing. And that's a bit more drought resistant. Camecrista rotunda, whatever it's called. Yeah, so there's a few options there, but so that's to answer a very long answer to this question with mulch. Living mulch is great, and if you want to go for a chopped mulch, then woody is better because it lasts longer. It saves you the time for longer to do it all over again. Any other questions?
Do you ever use guano for the nitrogen?
I did in the past, but unfortunately it's not a very sustainable resource. You know, Madura, they sell it at Environmart. Yeah. It's a great product, yes, but you know, Nauru was once the richest country in the world. Now not anymore. or some Peruvian islands 200 years ago, whenever that was. Yeah, so that's just basically mining an island, and then it comes in from overseas. So it's not very sustainable.
Blood and bone.
Yeah, blood and bone is good because it's some sort of regional resource, right? I'm growing enough mulch to cover all the swales.
You can send me some of your pics.
I find it easier.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I will leave the odd one to give me pause. There's one up there that flowers all the time, so I might just leave that one. Beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, my main goal with the ice cream beans is nitrogen fixing. Yeah.
And do you find that they run under the ground? Mine seems to travel.
Right at the top.
Mine haven't so far, but I have seen that. Yeah. Not as bad as the Panama cherry tree. Yeah. Or the, what's it called, strawberry tree? Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna cut it out now. I've got another one down there, but I can't get fruits because the birds eat it all, you know, and now it starts popping up everywhere and I'm like, what am I doing to myself?
Yeah, because the birds eat the insects.
The insects, yeah, but I give them something else that I can also eat. And I mean, the insects they can't complain, you know. They're getting into everything. They got plenty of stuff already. They don't need my Panama cherry. For a suit, that thing there, it doesn't like it. It needs more protection. So that tree there's a cacao relative, and I've got a few of them. I've actually used the native canopy down that way to plant more. So I've got a lot of cacao and a lot of cupuaçu down the back. So it's basically here it's intensive where there was grass, you know, because this area was cleared. So I basically used that, took advantage of that, but in the back it's not cleared, but there's a lot of particular type of tree, like 90% of that whole forest down there is just one species of tree. And so I'm chopping that out and replace it with cacao, but I leave the native overstory, and not every plant is suited for that, but cacao and cupuaçu is so.
Cacao and what?
Cupuaçu. Yeah, it's really yummy. You've got to have a look online and later. Yeah. Cupuaçu, it's got this C with the little hook on the bottom, and it produces a pod this big.
Is it like cacao?
It's related to it.
Oh, that's macambo.
I've got that as well, but that's actually a cacao. That's white cacao, and I have that as well. But the mocambo has a round leaf like this. It's over there. I got 3 or so, and see this one over there has longish leaves. It looks almost exactly like cacao. But the difference is with the cacao, you got a bean and then the arrow is very small. And with the cupuaçu, the seed is very small and the arrow is big. So you eat the other thing. With the cacao, you can also make the nectar out of the arrow around it, but there's not much. With the cupuaçu, it's a big pod because there's lots of that. Yeah.
Wow. Write the name down later.
Yeah. And there's a sour and a sweet variety, and I still don't know which one I've got.
Well, how long before your fruit comes, do you reckon?
I don't know. Kuranda is a bit on the... So a few things like mangosteen, durian, cupuaçu and cacao, and probably also tuku and some other things I've got here. They are actually borderline to what they're comfortable with the climate. So I do push it a little bit with some, but it's just because I like those plants a lot. But they are not really what I should be growing here. So I have to tweak it a lot, and to answer your question, they're going to take way longer than they would take in cans or up in the Daintree. Yeah, but I just put up with it.
Experiment.
Yeah, oh, they still grow. It's just slower.
Yeah.
Unless they cop a heavy frost ones. I think Kuranda had a coffee industry about 100
big
years ago.
coffee industry,
And
yeah.
then they had this really heavy frost, and it all knocked it all out. So
Black
that
frost.
could happen.
Oh, there's some survivors.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of survivors Black frost.
Yeah, the coffee that was around 100 years ago, there's still some there.
Oh yeah, no, it's like a weed everywhere, but no one grows it commercially anymore. And I find that's a bugger, you know. But you've got a good eye for that, because that's exactly what I'm doing down there. So this kind of trough down there in front of the dam, in front of the gully, that's going to become a dam, and that then creates a whole new ecosystem where I can plant more different things like aquatic plants, water chestnuts, lotus, which you can eat as well. And then maybe taro along. Yeah, I've got taro. Yeah, exactly, absolutely. So I've had taro. Yeah, so I've had taro in the first swale here, and the bush turkey ate every single one. I had like 50 taros, like beautiful purple taro, the big one, and because I didn't fence it, or I couldn't fence it, so but what I'm planning to do is with this dam, I might fence the dam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you can put,
Wallaby stew on Monday night. On Tuesday night. So wallaby stew on Monday night, roast chicken on Tuesday night.
Yeah, exactly.
What will you tell me? How can I tend you? How can I tend to the ones who pour life through these lungs? Care, there are rivers going dry, bone and sorrow, made of pain, drought of feeling, yet the rain can give us freedom, forest rain, but if we cut them, goes away. Help us open these vessels to receive your whispers, tender breath keepers, givers of life to these lungs. May I open my ears and surrender. What will you tell me? How can I tend you? How can I tend to the ones who pour life through these lungs? For every one of us you've uprooted, you can soothe it by planting another of the same as the kind you've uprooted. Every ending a beginning if you choose it. For every one of us you've uprooted, you can soothe it by planting another of the same as the kind you've uprooted. Every ending a beginning if you choose it. You can soothe it if you choose it. To receive your whispers, tender breath keepers, givers of life to these lungs. May I open my ears and surrender. What will you tell us? How can we tend you? How can we tend to the ones who pour life through these lungs? Oh, oh, oh. How can we tend